Broadcasting live and worldwide. Here's Brodie Brazil.
So just to set this up, we had to beg Brownie to be on the podcast and part of the video. And I was hesitating, Brownie, to not even have Jace here because it is captured on camera and I didn't want his good looks to be a distraction.
I don't think that'll be a problem. Not exactly in my Sunday's best today.
I'm not sure that you're speaking truth either. You didn't have to bribe me to get on. I said we need to go make some coffee and I'll be right there.
Cheers to that, huh?
As long as we have coffee.
This
Anything's
production
Anything's possible.
Sponsored by our friends at Pete's. Well, not really, but let's just say that they are the sponsor.
And there is Pete's in this cup.
Sharks topics. We're getting to 10 approximately games left in the season, and one that everybody's been talking about the entire campaign is Erik Karlsson going to re-sign? But we're kind of at this weird spot right now where that's like the furthest thing from my mind. And you know what's funny, Brownie? You don't see this, but on social, everybody asks that question, and then they say, will Erik Karlsson resign? Because they forget the hyphen.
Oh, okay.
And I always say, well, I hope he doesn't resign, but I hope he does.
You're so clever, Brodie.
Does re-sign at some point. Yeah. You get what I'm saying, though?
Well, and by not signing, he would
resign from the Sharks. No, but it's a weird spot because like he's got the injury and the rehab to focus on. The team has the playoffs and larger scale things to focus on. So it's like, as much as people do want to bring that up right now, it's probably not on the forefront of anybody's radar today.
Well, and I'll take it one step further. At the beginning of the year, the focus would have been re-sign Karlsson for as many years as possible. So he wasn't able to do that until after the trade deadline.
Right.
But now there's somebody else on my mind that is a more important conversation piece to
I know who it is. I know who it is.
And it's changed
Number
since
8?
the beginning of the year.
Is it the cap?
I think so.
The old.
See, we read his mind.
The old American.
Well, so
You're not Timo Meyer?
he's played his way in.
Yeah.
He's their leading goal scorer, the captain of the team. And I'm saying from the beginning of the year, if you have a depth chart of people of importance to sign, Pavelski wasn't at the top
Yep.
at the beginning of the year. No disrespect.
Yeah.
No, he had the
coming
injury
off
prone, yeah.
the down year, getting Karlsson. You know, now you got to try to fit pieces in.
They just signed Kane.
Right.
The best thing for the team and for Pavelski is that he's gone off. The worst thing to re-sign him and for all this to happen is that he's gone off.
Yeah.
Welcome to 2019 economics in the sports world.
I don't think Doug Wilson was planning on a 40-goal season for Joe Pavelski.
You produce our shows, Jason. You have the pulse.
I try.
The pulse. You babysit Brownie and I.
More you.
You get the pulse of what's going on, and I mean that's been a huge question all season long, though. Like what's happening with Karlsson here? Now, to be fair, nothing of the 8-year variety could even have taken place before late February. So it's no surprise that we went almost the entire season without something happening. And again, I don't think it's a surprise that there's not something like right now being signed.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're Erik Karlsson, why would you not go test the waters?
Take some time.
I mean,
yeah.
If you put yourself in Erik Karlsson's shoes, if you're, the Bachelor, you're not going to just give the rose to the first girl you meet. You got to get to know all 20 of them.
He's a TV guy.
Look at the analogy.
I'm just saying.
TV examples.
How much does he play, Brownie? There's, like I said, about 10 games left. We just had this segment on pregame, and as soon as Hetty said 3 to 4 games, that's exactly what I was kind of targeting too. It all goes with the comment that he better be 100% healthy to try and come back, right? You don't want him with any fear of re-injuring the groin, but I feel like if he got a couple games in, 3 or 4 games in, he'd feel much better about shaking the rust off before the playoffs.
I'm only going to go back to what I think it would take me to get prepared.
What would you want optimally?
I think if we're talking 5 to 6 games, that's a couple weeks of hockey. We're not just talking how you're going to perform on the ice, but it's your overall. Like, you got to remember we talked about this being St. Patrick's Day and superstition versus tradition. How long do you have to do something before it becomes a habit? Well, not playing games unfortunately,
takes you out of
is
that.
the habit right now. So you got to go back, get into the habit of what you do to be your best. And secondly, how long did it take him to get comfortable with this group at the beginning of the year? Pete DeWar says 20 games. Yeah. He says 10. Was it 15? So more games, the better, at least for me.
Yeah.
Because then once you get into it, he's missed enough games where it's not going to be a fatigue factor.
Right.
We're only concerned with a health factor.
Right. And the potential of re-injuring the groin.
Yeah, but if it's 100% good,
right,
you should have zero risk of re-injuring it. If you're coming back too soon, don't come back too soon.
But is a groin kind of one of those injuries where you can think it's healed and then retweak it? Because that's kind of what it seems happened the first time. The first time around with EK65 was he thought it was healthy. I believe he thought he was fully healthy, and then he retweaked something. And it's that soft tissue thing,
and it's
right?
so deep in the muscle fibers.
Yeah.
And for people that have never skated, you got to skate at a certain pace.
Oh, sorry.
So you've never actually brought those muscles to the skating party. If you're really skating,
I've never brought muscles to anything, but let's be honest.
You brought him to A's pregame live that one time.
Oh, that's true. You got to see,
yeah.
I saw.
I did 20 push-ups right before that.
You looked pretty big next to Jose Canseco.
But my point is, until you've skated at that level, at that pace, getting tugged and pulled and having to actually get somewhere, you don't know, to Jace's point.
Yeah.
But all you can do is test it as much as you can. If you're running and jumping and hopping and warming it up properly, the odds of you hurting it again should be reduced.
Yeah.
But in practice, you're not laying out to block a shot, or you're not
can't ever
in those
get
scrambles.
it to game speed,
it's really hard to
to
replicate game action where you're reading and reacting.
Yeah. And it's different than a shoulder.
Yeah.
If you're coming back from a separated shoulder or something, there's devices that you connect to yourself
and you
to
can
make
still
sure you don't fall apart.
Yeah.
And you can your engine still works. Mm-hmm. For Erik Karlsson, that's his legs. For most hockey players, it's their legs. And so I believe
it's the most important part of his game.
Legs, lower body are the most important of anyone's game.
Yeah.
Jace, what's the thing you're most confident about in what you've seen with the Sharks this season? If there's one thing you can say, all right, this is why they're going to...
That's a good question.
Well, it's what I do. But
yeah.
Who sent you that?
Jace.
Is that from Twitter?
Yeah, exactly.
He sent me the question.
Good.
He's taking credit for someone else's question again.
Oh, come on.
That's what happens on a daily basis on Sharks pregame.
Do you want some time on this one? Or do you have one?
I'm confident that... I'd say this. I'm confident that no one else has a Brent Burns that can change a game.
Okay.
That can take over a game the way that Brent Burns can take over a game. I don't think anybody in the Western Conference has a guy like that can he's like a unicorn in my mind. I mean, he's such a rare player to be able to do what he's done in his career, and just this season, if you look at it, it might look like his goal totals are down, but I mean, he's defensively sound, and he's got, 1 million assists
He's a
this
points
year.
guy now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and what was the thing we used to always knock him on was the
Plus
defense,
minus.
the plus minus, and he's taking care of that. He's on the ice in all situations. I just think that he's the variable, the it factor that I think the Sharks have every time they face another team. Like, that the other team doesn't have a Brent Burns.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll go next, Brownie, so you can have the confident last word. I think everybody will point at the Sharks' diversity in scoring and how many different guys can, find the back of the net. And theoretically, that's going to eliminate a scoring rut that a lot of playoff teams have, and then consequently, that's the end of their run. But I feel like if you look at the Sharks this season, they've never had an extremely high, and they've never had an extremely low. It's not to say that October and November, those were rougher months. December turned things around, and January and February have been so much better. But, they've had a win streak of 5 and 2 of 6 and 1 of 7. But they're not fluky. You know what I'm saying? Nobody can look at them this regular season and say, well, the record is way better because they were outside themselves, human speaking. I feel like we know who they are, and you gotta feel pretty confident with who they are. They've never been really high. They've never been really low.
So that's your.
I just think that's the thing. I feel like we know them.
Yeah.
Jace was saying they have an X factor. I totally agree. I just feel like we have a good read on them, and they've never dug themselves a huge hole, and they've also never been on top of a mountain. So they're fairly consistent. They're not going to disappear in the playoffs.
So the it factor for me that other teams don't have is their leadership. They've been there, they've done it, and I think nothing rattles this group. You've seen them come out and not be their best and come back the next period or the next two periods
That's
or the third
one.
period and absolutely figure it out. And everybody's like, what just happened? That was two different teams. And Pete DeBoer's mentioned it about the leadership group, that they take control of situations. They've been there before. They act like they've been there before. And if you look at the other teams that they're going to face, how many other teams in the West can say they've done all the things that the leadership group of the Sharks have done? The ones that are going to the playoffs, none. Maybe you could argue the Preds, but even that leadership group isn't the same.
Well, to your point, Calgary doesn't have a lot of second season experience. The Winnipeg Jets, and we're talking some guys on the team have been there and in fact won it all before, but Winnipeg, Nashville, Las Vegas, they were in the final last year, but those are just the top tier teams out of the West. I understand what you're saying. Nobody can say they've had the experience.
Well, if you look at the
Sharks
the
have
Dallases,
on a year-to-year
the
basis.
St. Louis's,
Arizona,
the
Minnesota.
Dogs, Minnesota. So Calgary, I think that's the group, the big unknown. Because here's a team that figured out how to play.
Right.
Uber talented.
Took off.
Yeah.
Led everybody.
Ottawa was in the Uber.
Took
nice
off.
one.
They were leading the world, and now they've come back down to earth. But it'd be interesting to see how they react. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But now the thing is how are they going to respond? Because the thing that they don't have is that goalie that everybody looks back to and says, even if we're a little bit off, he's going to save us, give us an opportunity to find our game. Right?
I think out of all the teams in the Western Conference, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a certain level of satisfaction each team will have once they punch their ticket to the playoffs. I think the Sharks will have the least amount of satisfaction punching their ticket to the playoffs.
Procedural.
Punching a ticket to the playoffs is only the foundation of what they want. They're looking way beyond the playoffs. Their goal is one thing and one thing only. When they punch their ticket to the playoffs, they're not going to be out celebrating and popping bottles of champagne.
We're not like baseball players.
Yeah, but I mean,
we made the
those Calgary guys. Those
party.
Calgary guys are going out after they punch their ticket because they
Brazil
haven't been
would
there.
do the same thing.
Yeah,
you got to celebrate.
He'll probably be out.
Yeah,
because he's like, this is what we do in baseball.
Brent Burns is just going to go home and comb his beard and go to bed.
The rest of the Sharks fan base, Sharks Nation, Jace and I, we're going to sleep because we're getting ready for the playoffs. He'll be out all night.
Act like you've been there before, I think is the slogan. All right, so on that note, and it's the last thing here, you look at kind of the teams lining up for the playoffs, whether they're in for sure or they're hoping to get there. There is kind of like a line I drew here in the Western Conference, and as the standings are right now, Calgary, San Jose, Winnipeg, Nashville, and Las Vegas. That's where I drew the line. Teams that are below that, St. Louis, Dallas, Arizona, Minnesota, and I even threw Chicago in the mix here. I just feel like it is very clearly, Brownie, and I'll begin with you, the haves and the have-nots. Not in terms of experience, but in terms of momentum, expectation, maybe the way their roster looks. That being said, a couple of these teams like the Stars or Desert Dogs or Wild, they're going to get in, and I don't fear them any less, But I just feel like it's not a top to bottom like the way it used to be. Everybody feels like they're the same. There are some heavyweights here, and there are some middleweights, but those middleweights can do damage.
Yeah, and for me, the parity in the league is just unbelievable. When Los Angeles won, they were the 8th seed. I think if you look at the list of teams that are, could finish 8th, Dallas gives you pause. Ben Bishop right now is
everyone's dangerous.
He's not allowed a goal in forever.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think can take you further than anyone thought. Look at Jonathan Quick.
Goaltending.
Right.
Yeah, you get hot you only need 16 wins. Now all of a sudden it's 4 out of every 7. And I think that year also, it was 2 or 3 Game 7s that the Kings won.
Oh, I think they won 3 Game 7s maybe to get to the Stanley Cup final, right?
Right, like it was 2 or 3.
Right.
So the point of the deal is you don't have to go 16-0. So you're looking at teams sometimes that can go 16-0, and you're talking about the Tampas, and you're talking about Washington. Nobody has to go 16-0. You have to win 4 out of 7 4 times.
How do you see the playoffs, Jace, just in terms of what the Sharks might be up against?
Well, how about this? How about what the rest of the Western Conference is up against the Sharks? I mean,
he just
if you're
turned the tables.
I mean, if you're any other team in the Western Conference, are you wanting to play the Sharks?
No,
I wouldn't.
I would
not
look
want
against
to play
them. Yeah,
I would not want to play
Yeah.
this team if I was Nashville, if I was Winnipeg, if I was anybody in the Western Conference. I think the Sharks are the most dangerous team in the Western Conference just because of all that experience. They have the guys to do it. Like the players they have can absolutely get it done.
Well,
It's
the
just a
good
matter
thing is
of
they
doing
don't have
it.
anybody else coming into the lineup not
No,
playing.
that's
Oh,
it.
yeah, that's Karlsson.
Oh, yeah.
They
Oh,
still
yeah.
got to put him in there.
Just like a 2-time Norris winner.
Yeah.
No big deal. Do you guys feel like this might be the deepest roster we've ever seen for the Sharks? I know we've had that question before.
I mean, you've had
Let
an
me-
MVP.
let me talk to
You have
Jace
an
here
MVP.
first.
You have 3 Norris trophies on the back end. You have
but like
you have Olympians. You have, I mean,
Logan Couture is like a middle of the road scorer for this team. He's not, but I mean, he's sitting on 24 goals. That's like one of your top guys on most teams. It's just that Pavelski's got 37 and Hurdle eclipsed the 30 mark. And
Timo's up there.
Kane is knocking on the door of 30.
You know,
It's just it's so impressive.
For me, it's the deepest roster numbers-wise that they've had maybe ever.
yeah. How many guys in double-digit goals do they have?
It was 12 at last check. Let me
I think
just
it's
do quick
12.
math. 1, 2, 3, 4.
But
So it's like
that's
12.
like most of the team.
Yeah.
now
And 11 are forwards.
I
by
could
the
also
way. You can
argue
have all your forwards in double
in
digits.
years gone by, like the Sharks have had a glorious amount of riches throughout the years in some other teams with high expectations. So I don't want to compare, because in today's NHL, this is the deepest roster. But if you go 10 years ago to a different NHL,
Right.
you needed the muckers and the
types.
grinders and
Yeah.
the guys that maybe didn't have double digits, but did other things better. So you got to build yourself for that era. That's why I don't think it's a fair comparison.
I'll leave it on this, and I'll start with you, Jace. To me, they'll go as far as defense can take them. And I think it's pretty clear that is what got the season turned around from just mediocre October and November into December. They started, playing better defense. That even led to more offense. That led to Martin Jones and Aaron Dell looking better and having better stats. To me, that's the thing I'm looking forward to most.
I mean, that's what Pete DeBoer preaches. I mean,
Yeah.
that's their whole system. It's 2 or fewer. We all know that. I mean,
Hashtag.
2
Hashtag.
or fewer. 2 or fewer goals, this team won't lose. I mean, Jones is gonna steal games in the playoffs. There's no doubt in my mind.
I agree.
He's gonna be ready. There's gonna be games that he bails the Sharks out. Like we've seen him do it before, both years. All the years he's been here. And I think that, Pete DeBoer, that's what he brought here, was a defense first mentality. This team has always scored. They've always had a good power play. I think they're scoring more goals per game than they ever have in their
Second in the
franchise
league right
history.
now. Yeah. In goals per game.
Yeah, and just like in their franchise's history, I think they're like at a record clip too. So they're going to be able to score goals. I mean, we just said there's 12 guys with double-digit goals. Like you can't stop. Like if you're an opponent, how are you going to stop all 12 guys from you can only stop so many guys.
Well, and if one of them slumps, there's 11 others to fill the void.
But I would not worry about the Sharks scoring 3 or 4. It's more, you're right, it's more about them allowing 2 or fewer.
Can you counter Brownie with anything? I think Jason and I are kind of, it is obvious. We're stating that. And I think a lot of people see it. Is there anything else we're missing here that you see that's imperative?
Health.
Yeah.
I think one thing that people overlook
Yeah.
is everybody's going to be beat up.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
But you can't be beat up to the point where you get too many injuries. That's a bad thing.
Right.
Right. Especially in the second season. They've done a tremendous job up through some of the things they've dealt with both EKs out, and that's impressive. Shimmick, now he's gone. So how many of these can you overcome?
Right.
The mentality is next man up. I get it. But at some point, too much is just too much. They're not there yet, obviously. But I think some of it is you're going to, in a long second season, things have to go your way.
How do you think this team is built for the postseason? As far as, it ramps up physically. Do you see that element in their game? Do you think they can ramp it up once the postseason comes?
I think that is the only question that is posed in the hockey world.
Yeah.
San Jose's got the depth. They got the goaltending. Jones will be fine. 2 or fewer.
Do they have the what's the word? Grit? Do they have the size? What is it?
It's the same thing that people talk as a negative about Tampa Bay. They're not extremely physical.
They're too silky.
They're not.
Yeah.
Not that they don't want to.
Yeah.
Not that they don't have the grit.
Right.
But they're a smaller version of some of the teams that have the same amount of grit. And over 7 games, is that
Can you wear down the opponent
Right.
enough? Yeah.
Because it's not like you're just playing once and then you're leaving town.
Yeah.
You're staying for 2 and then you're going back for 2 and 1-1.
I mean, could the experience factor play into that? I mean, knowing that these guys go to the playoffs every single year, they know it's a marathon, not a sprint, that they're not going for broke every single game, 82 games, before the playoffs. And then once you do hit the playoffs, it is go for broke, empty the gas tank.
Personally, I'm not wired that way.
Yeah.
I'm like full
I know,
throttle.
you're go.
Like
You're the Energizer
when
Bunny.
I'm up in the fighter jet, it's like you want to see how that thing goes. You don't
Have
want
you ever
to.
flown one of those?
It's funny. I was
What do you
just
do
thinking
in your
about
fighter
wrapping
jet?
up the podcast and wrapping up the YouTube video. Yeah, I'll take you on a ride sometime. You want to go flying?
I'm not sure that I trust you. I hardly
See,
trust
there he
you
goes.
in a podcast
Yeah.
setting.
Hey,
No,
cheers.
he could be the flight attendant. He can bring
Yeah.
you some
This
Ginger
podcast
ale.
was
Can I get another coffee?
presented by Pete's. Well, not really, but that's what powered us. You ready for my sign off of the podcast? Tell me what you think about this.
1 second.
Okay.
We should actually do some type of a
Sign
interview, Twitter, something
Yeah.
when we do fly one day when I get enough courage
Okay.
to go with you.
We'll document it. We'll put it on the social. Have you heard my sign off?
Do I want to?
I'm Brodie Brazil, and yes, that is my real name.
Ugh.